Dario. Did you take a picture of that?
Yes, I do. It has paws.
Yes. Bunny. Nice. I guess that's it.
Okay, now close this so that you can have your sound.
Yes. Alright. Hello, folks.
Hello.
Hi. I guess this is going to be the first time I'm going to be speaking hobby-wise in public, I guess. My name's Karl, or Carlos. Either Karl or Carlos, but never Carlo. Never call me Carlo. I will never respond to Carlo. But online, I'm known as Bakira Fish, and welcome to Painting Miniatures. So I understand everybody's interested in at least getting started or knowing about painting miniatures. Let's just get comfortable and let's go around the room. Tell me who you are and what your main geeky hobby is. Let's start with you.
I'm Kyle, and my main geeky hobby is RPGs.
Awesome. All right. Hi, Kyle. Kyle, right?
Yeah.
All right. And
I'm Stephanie. I'm relatively new to Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm very much addicted to it. And I'm one half of the Regality Kitchen, the one with the.
Oh!
You
don't taste good? I've always been curious.
samples next time, maybe.
Like mini dragon.
Okay. I'm sorry. What was the name again?
Stephanie.
Stephanie. All right. Awesome. All right. So
I'm
that's-
JB, I'm the other half of the
Okay. So the baker, who's the baker? Between you're the baker and who's the artist? Both of you? At the same time. Oh, okay. Cool. So teamwork talaga. Awesome. Next.
My name is Jello.
Hi.
In terms of hobbies, like everything gaming related is normally I'm there.
Yeah.
So RPGs, wargaming, magic.
Magic. There we go. Okay, thank you. Next, sir.
I'm Arch. I just want to check out what you guys do.
That's fine. That's fine. Welcome. Art, right?
Arch.
Arch. Okay, and
My name is Genesis. I've been playing D&D for 6 months now.
awesome.
Geeky hobbies, that's a long list. Gunpla, anime, novels, high fantasy novels, games, and what else? Sketching as well, basically.
Awesome.
Lot of things.
Genesis. Hi.
Hi, I'm Valerie, and I do pottery. So I like.
I'm sorry, you do what?
I do pottery.
Okay.
Do you do it the old way?
Yeah, with
The wheel.
That's cool. The wheel and the clay. Okay. Awesome.
I've been in RPG for a bit now. The last game was the Angle Kite.
Super game, the mega game.
It was fun, but I'm still a beginner.
That's fine. That's fine. There's no tenureship in art. You don't gain experience points the longer you play. No? That's fine. Valerie, right? Hi.
Hi, I'm Jofer, as you can see in the arrow, and I'm a senior college. Looking forward to graduate this April.
Okay.
And then
Congratulations in advance.
Congratulations. I'm a geek since I was hit by a puberty.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Or maybe I was born it.
I'd like to think so, but I was.
Since I played the NES version of The Legend of Zelda. That's the start of me being a geek. And it evolves until Dungeons and Dragons, which is my favorite game. And then I read a lot of books, especially the children's fantasy. Brian Jake's Red Wall series.
Red Wall.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I like also gritty fantasy novels or movies like Conan the Barbarian, starring Arnold.
Arnold, yeah. The best of
The
only one.
But you've never read the book, right?
Not yet. It's hard to find, especially the compilation version.
Because it's way different from the movie.
Yeah, it is. It's very different. Okay, so Jofer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm Mira.
I played with you guys with GTA, yes, I remember. And then, basically, I've been to the RPG scene for about only a year, more than a year. I played different platforms like Fate, D&D, and not well versed yet, but I'm really into it. So I have been into art, so that's why I'm here.
Cool. Thank you very much, Mary.
I
And
need to-
you, yes, of course.
I'm just here to drink coffee. No, no, I'm Honey. My wiki hobby is, well, I dabble in art RPG because he's my boyfriend. He drags me everywhere. And what else? I am currently introducing myself to watercolor calligraphy. Right now, I'm into brush pen, so hopefully, I get to be good enough to get something printed or hang on the wall or maybe make money out of it eventually.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you. Right. Yeah. So again, just a little bit of background on how I started with minis. Yeah, I like Jello when it comes to games. I'm pretty much there. Video games, tabletop games, and one thing I really like about painting minis is that it addresses my need to game as well as my artistic side. Right? Because you know, for a kid who has asthma growing up, you know, you can't play sports where when your lungs betray you. So I gravitated towards playing games, fantasy, and of course, painting miniatures. Now, a lot of people, I know a lot of people would see people with painted miniatures on tabletops. You'd go to the malls and you see people playing them, or you'd see people with in events like these where people would be playing with RPGs with miniatures as well. And I guess this talk is going to be an introduction to the artistic side of those miniatures, because right now it's a good time to be a geek.
It is.
It's a great time to be a geek. There's a lot of products coming out now, and board games especially. If you're a big fan of board games as well as RPGs and stuff, you'll notice that a lot of board games that are coming out right now have a lot, figures, very well designed, detailed figures. Not like before. When I was a kid, I remember I had a Batman board game, and I bought the Batman board game, and the Batman figure was represented by a blue piece, that looked like a joystick, and that was supposed to be Batman. Right, and that kind of takes you out of the immersion of the game. But nowadays, you've got these pretty miniatures alongside the game. But there's a downside to it, because a lot of these miniatures don't come painted like that. They actually come like this. It's either they don't come painted, and if you take a look at the board, can you actually see the figures there?
Yeah.
You can? Not those figures on the side, but the figures on the board itself. Can you see? No. Okay. That's a problem, because there are actually figures there, and when you're playing with these games, right, you got your beautifully sculpted figures, you got the detailed boards. The figures kind of get lost in the board if you don't paint them. All right, so that's one. And or let's say you're mainly an RPG player, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you want because you either don't want to borrow other people's figures, or the ones that you see are painted like these. The ones that you see, well, I wouldn't call them abominations. They're still painted. They're still well painted. But maybe you're of an artistic inclination that you want to do something better than what you have here. So one option is to go ahead and start painting figures. And maybe you don't know where to start, or you're hesitant to start, or you're just interested in seeing how it works. So let's take a look at this. Now, one of the questions that pop up is this hobby just for boys? Admittedly, maybe a decade or so ago, you're going to see that painting miniatures is actually, here in the Philippines at the very least, is more dominated towards male stuff, like Space Marines. Actually, a lot of people's first introduction to painting Marines, building miniatures and using them for games, is for Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. So that's very macho male centric, and then you've got stuff like Conan the Barbarian and very masculine, aggressive, sexually aggressive stuff. So is it just for boys? Well, that would have been a harder question to answer maybe a few years ago. But now great part about being part of this hobby now is that a lot of the people, and especially a lot of the folks that I look up to, they're females. Right? You got Jen Haley and Meg Maples, and you're also going to notice that there is now a wider range of figures that you can choose from and that are available to us. Not necessarily something that you're going to see on the store shelves now when you go to, let's say, Neutral Grounds or whatever, but it is something that you can obtain through the circles that we have here because there's a lot of overlap between our hobbies or online, and you can probably course them through folks like Abubot and stuff like that. But yeah, so I'm just going to empathically say that this is not just for boys now. This hobby is not just for boys. And it's not just for the people who because when people started out, they have to paint their figures because they're going to play it with the game. But a lot of people start out like that, but then end up with the hobby, with the painting as their main hobbies. Alright? So, and you'll also, again, they're great range from superheroes to the typical fantasy to something a little bit more whimsical than the classical stuff. That's all available now. All right. Question. The other question: is it expensive to start? I'm going to be honest. It's a yes. It's a qualified yes. On the other hand, what I mean by this, because eventually you're going to get gear. You're going to get these stuff that you see here, and actually, that's. I don't have a living room. I have a work area. I have a work area. That's where most of my stuff is. But just to qualify, that's for if you want to get serious into this hobby. And if you think about it, any hobby that you want to get serious in, you're really going to be ending up spending money. Just to put, for example, to put my girlfriend on the spot here, honey, she's starting out with calligraphy, right? And calligraphy, if you just want to dip your toes into it, it's pretty cheap. You 144 for a pen of one color. So you're going to eventually get the other color. Then you're going to get another color. Then you're going to run out of that color, so you're going to have to buy more. So that's the mindset there. Yes.
That means.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no inexpensive hobby.
There is no inexpensive. Whoops. There is no inexpensive hobby. But here's the thing. A lot of people get sticker shock specifically when it comes to this painting miniatures, because one of the things that they ask for is, for example, how much is one pot of paint? Right now, I think this is at 180 per pot of paint. So immediately people start doing the math that I need 10 colors, so I probably could get an entire board game out of that. So no, right? But here's the thing. Again, like I said, this is for the long term if you really want to get into it. But to start, if you want to dip your toe into it and you just want to see if this is something that you want to do, it's not that expensive, right? Because, all right, for example, if you're just going to get the very basic gear to start when it comes to painting miniatures, all you really need is basically a good set of brushes. I recommend the Sakura brushes that you actually. Yeah, so synthetic ones, the ones that are white, and you can get this at National. It ranges between 200. It's synthetic, so it will bend, but just to start, it's a good place to start. Alright, it's not terrible, it's not a terrible brush, but it's not necessarily something that you want to stick with if you want to get serious with it. But again, it'll get you where you need to go. For the longest time, I've been using synthetics, and these are the synthetics that I recommend. So that's about $200. Then you get your acrylic paint set. Actually, everything that you're going to see in this list, you can get from National Bookstore. Okay? You just one-stop shop for miniature painting, believe it or not. Now, the acrylic paint set, this is this typical student set where you get all of the colors, all of the basic colors that you need. They're not specifically made for minis. The paints that I have here right now are specifically made for minis. So they're thinner, they have brighter colors, they tend to be self-leveling. What I mean by that, they don't keep brush strokes like your typical artistic, artists are student level paints. But if you're just wanted to start and this is something that you want, to see if this is something that you want to stick with, you can just get that 300 and start painting some miniatures, right? Then you got your mixing plate, of course, where you need to mix your paints. The X-Acto knife there is to get rid of mold lines. Are you familiar with what mold lines are?
Yes.
Those are those ugly lines that you see on your figures, yeah, from the casting process. And again, the easiest way to get rid of that is by scraping them off with an X-Acto knife. So I would recommend starting out with that, especially if you're playing with or if you're painting board game minis, because they do tend to have some of those mold lines more present. I just need to warn you about this is when you start scraping off mold lines off of your toys, you're going to start seeing mold lines everywhere. You will. To the point that you see a monoblock chair and you see a mold line, you kind of want to scrape it. So then just be careful with that. And of course, you got your primer. Now, primer is the first, basically the main coat of paint that you have. This is the paint that sticks to your miniature.
That's
and
where
your
the paint will stick.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one that sticks to your miniature, and then your paint will stick to the primer. Okay. You can skip this, but then I don't guarantee the staying power of your paints. Your paints will peel off eventually.
Especially with plastics and water-based paints.
And especially if you're going to go with metals.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. But there you go. So basically, for less than $1,000, and if you're of an artistic inclination, you probably have some of this already. All right. So this is. It's then of course that's when you get your figures. You can start out with, again, like I said, board games, or you can get a figure, or you can get some of your friends to loan one of your D&D hero clicks, throwaway, or you can even start with those Jollibee toys. For practice, that's what I sometimes use. Those throwaway toy soldiers that you get from the Changi and whatever. You can start out just to see if this is something for you. But then once you got that, once you start making your first forays into painting, then you can decide, is it for me? Because I know a lot of people who want to, let's say, go into tabletop wargaming. They want to start, they say that they're going to paint their own miniatures, but then they end up saying, no, this part of this hobby is not for me. So they end up having somebody else paint them or playing with unpainted miniatures. Okay. If you're playing with unpainted miniatures, you are evil. Sorry. No. But basically, it's either they just give up on that side of the hobby altogether, or they hire other people to get their stuff painted. Like, self-advertisement. I do commission painting for other people. And also, this is the other thing. A lot of people are afraid to paint their minis because they're afraid of screwing up. They're plastic. They're tougher than you think. All right. So for example, if you paint something and you end up not liking it, or at least for your first try, this is not something that you want to get rid of it, or you want to start over, you have options to do that. Especially if you're painting with plastic figures or metal figures. These are the options. These are your erasers, pretty much. These are your reset buttons. So all of this you can get from Ace Hardware. So you can either use brake fluid .3. I don't recommend this, but this is probably one of the cheaper and faster options that you can use. So if you have particularly stubborn things that you want to clean, you can go with. But again, cancer, avoid.
That's new to me. They use
brake fluid.
Before they use lighter fluid. But for some paints, they use lighter fluid.
Yeah, but
first time I heard brake fluid.
Yeah, lighter fluid. The one thing that I don't like about lighter fluid is volatile, so it doesn't stay in the container for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but basically brake fluid. But again, you're not supposed to be dumping this in the sink.
Yes.
But otherwise, you can go with simple green. Simple green concentrate specifically. You'll see that in Ace Hardware. Hard to find now because somebody's hoarding. I don't know. But you could go with Pine Sol. This is the cheaper version. It's not as strong as Simple Green. It's not as good as Simple Green, but that'll get you where you need to be if you want to get rid of the paint that you just applied. Whether you or not you want to start over, or you just want to say, I don't want this hobby, I don't like this aspect of the hobby. I'm just going to restore whatever it is that I painted. So the reason I'm saying this is, the reason I'm putting this up there is because a lot of people are hesitant because they are afraid to ruin their expensive toys. But know that you have options in starting over, right? If you paint something and you don't like it, you can always go ahead and restart, all right? And that's the thing about this hobby as well, is that it's not going to be instantaneous. Alright? This is something that you're going to do and you're going to have to get better at it. And that's actually part of the journey for a lot, for a lot of us. I didn't start out painting well. I didn't start out painting at the level that I am painting now. And I am not where I want to be. I want to get better because even now I know there are some people locally and internationally who are, heads and tails better than me. So, but again, it's just one of those things that you just have to get used to it. But the thing is, that's really the only the things that we talked about so far, aside from your time and your dedication to the hobby, are the only things that you're really putting into it. It's not like any other type of art form. For example, if drawing, you're going to get into drawing. Some people get lost in there because you don't have the form yet. The advantage of painting miniatures is that you already have the form there. It's already there. The form's there. All you have to do is lay the color in there and basically put the soul into the miniature. Okay. So just to give you an idea of what my process is. Alright. I start out with a bare miniature, then it's primed. In this case, I'm priming white. Okay. And by the way, this method I use because it's fast. Okay. This method of painting, you don't necessarily have to follow this. You can go and be more meticulous per section as you want. But I use this method because it's the fastest, because I have a lot of things to paint, and I want, sometimes I want figures to be on the table as fast as possible. All right, so priming. So after, by the way, most for a lot of the figures, make sure that you wash them first. Wash them, dry them thoroughly, then you prime them. So basically, it's just spray priming. And in this case, was I using white or is it gray? Either way, doesn't matter. People prime either with black paint, primer red, primer gray, or white. It all depends on what you want to do eventually. I went with white here just because everybody else in that group had to be white. I could have gone black, wouldn't have made a difference, because the next note, what you're going to notice here is on the base coat stage, I just painted everything in one color. Alright, it's kind of like this. Kind of like this. You can put that around. I just basically painted that in one color. So that's the major color of the figure. Why did I paint it in one color? Because, that's that color is where that covers most of the figure, and it allows for a lot of shortcuts later on. So I base coat that. Then I start base coating the other colors. So you'll notice I painted the face, the skin colors, the hair, and other stuff there. But basically, just when started defining the other colors for the other sections of the figure. A lot of the figures, one thing that I would say as a tip when you're base coating the other colors, especially when you're painting miniatures, avoid having too many colors on your palette. What do I mean by this? If you're going to notice in the figure, there's one predominant color, which is blue. Then you get the secondary colors, which is the skin color, and then the third color, which is the hair. Then other colors are the details. Why just take two? I go with 3, 4, sometimes 5 colors in a figure, but I don't go more than that because the figure will look messy. It's small. It's meant to be seen from 3 feet away. Alright? And if you go with more colors, it's going to be hard to define the figure after that. So basically, that's what I do. Then, so after the base colors, then I went to detail. This, I could have saved for later, but I just did that because, trip lang. It's what I wanted to do at that moment. So I just detailed out the eyes. The eyes were free-handed. So that's where your skill and discipline will come in. Alright? There are techniques, there are tutorials. I actually made a tutorial for the eyes. I have that online. But I did that, then you got your highlights. Highlights are the higher colors. The lighter colors on the figure. So in this case, I put highlights on the hair. Okay? And basically, that's the finished figure. You can see the finished figure on the table there. I should have brought it here, but that's the finished figure. You're going to notice, you're going to notice I skipped the part about the sword and stuff. You can, again, just base coat that. I use some advanced techniques on the sword kasi. So, I'm not really going to be spending too much time there as this is just an introduction. But, again, these things you learn. Okay. One of the things that I'm going to be honest about here is that sword is probably one of the first few times I've actually done that technique. Okay, so it's not necessarily something that I have mastered and started doing. It's actually something that I just tried here in this figure, in this figure specifically. Then after I did that on that figure, then I decided, I'm going to do everything in that style, in that manner. All right. So those are that's my major. That's my basic process flow. Okay, and again, you can do that with the equipment that I just talked about earlier, with just the student grade acrylics. And then, if you're serious, if you feel that this is something that you enjoy, you feel that this is something that you want to pursue, it's something that you want to actually get better, that's when you can branch out to the other stuff. And these are the materials that I have here. This is basically my basic painting set. Not basic, but these are the paints that I have. These are specialized paints for miniatures. They're like I said, they go on thinner. They have more color, or they have brighter colors, and they don't keep brush strokes, because if your miniature is small and you have brush strokes, it's going to ruin the look of your figure. And again, they range from anywhere between 160 to as much as 220. And they're available in different places, different brands. I don't specifically endorse one specific brand because I'm more after the color. Alright? So it's not something that, for example, especially if you go around a lot of the local forums, they're going to say, I only use this color, I only use this brand and whatever. I don't suggest that because, again, if you're going to be looking at this at the artistic standpoint, it's really, you're just going to be going after colors and not necessarily, or whatever is more accessible to you, what's nearer to where you live. Because not all stores carry this. But again, for example, Deovir. Are you familiar with Deovir? The art store? Yeah, Mega Mall. So they carry Vallejo. Right? These are the cheaper ones, and they're very good. I like them. They tend to last a long time. That's the other thing about this hobby, by the way. One bottle, like I said, sticker shock of about 160 pesos. It's expensive, but then again, you can get a lot of miniatures out of this.
You're not going to use it for an entire miniature.
Yeah, you're not going to use this one bottle for the entire miniature. I've had some of the bottles here I've had for years. I've had this bottle since what? 2008?
They don't expire?
They don't. Funny you said that. There's one brand that has a bottle that's specific. I don't know if it's specifically designed to let the paint expire. They don't last long. They're good paints, but their bottles are crappy, so they don't last long. But these, I've had them for years.
As long as it's airtight, it will last.
Yeah, as long as it's airtight, as long as make sure that your caps are sealed there. These are actually the same brand. Sorry. These are actually the same brand. They're the same paints. I just put them in dropper bottles because I use an airbrush. So it's just easier for me to measure and drop. But normally you just get them from using your paintbrush and scoop it from there. So those are the paints that you have available. So you got your base paints and stuff like that. And then of course you got your, and like I said, I don't just use the specialized paints for my painting. I also use craft paints, like the ones that you use for everyday stuff, like this apple barrel. The good thing about craft paints is they tend to be cheaper, $80. But like I said, they tend to keep brush strokes. So you have to be very careful in cleaning them. You have to be very careful in applying them because they tend to go a little bit thicker than what you want them to be. So yeah, those are craft paints. That's an artist level paint right there. Brushes. This is probably where a lot of people will feel the pain when it comes to the hobby. Brushes. you're going to eventually want natural sable hair, Kolinsky sable brushes for your painting. Why? Because, like I said, even though I would recommend starting out with synthetics, synthetics tend to bend. After a while, yeah. As you can see, that bends, and you can't fix the bend, and sometimes most of the time they don't hold the point anymore. So there's
How do you know if they're synthetic?
Synthetics tend to be white or yellow, and they're going to actually tell you it's going to be synthetic or it's going to be the term taclon. Is what they're going. Yes, taclon.
Does it say on the?
Yes. If it's synthetic, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But if it doesn't, you can bet it's synthetic.
Okay.
Okay. Alright. So I'm just going to say that right now because if it is natural hair, because for example, Kolinsky sable is from the butt of an animal, of a specific animal. So, and it tends to be expensive. For example, this brush set me back $700. So, but again, how do I explain this?
How long have you had that set of brushes?
Here's the other thing. For Sakura brushes, they fray, they do that, they do the dogtail thing eventually afterwards, and you get rid of them after a few uses. If you're taking care of your sables, I've had this for years. The label has already faded out. You can see I've got paint streaks there. Some of the hairs have fallen off of this, but I'm still using it because it still holds a point. That's the most important thing when you're choosing a brush, is that it's able to hold the point. This one's pretty recent, but basically, that's the thing about the hobby as well, is that the price for if you're buying something expensive, you tend to know where it's going. You tend to know where the money's going because it tends to perform better than what you would get for cheap. It's like a night and day difference. For example, when I was painting with synthetics, I would not attempt to blend because I know my heart will just break if I just attempt to blend, because the tool will fight you. You can eventually get it right. You can eventually achieve what you're doing, but your tool will fight you the entire way. Okay? But when I started using the synthetics, that's when I got to be more confident with what I'm doing. Right? That's when I started seeing that there is a difference, and there is a difference in price. It's not just the brand. There is a difference in performance because synthetics tend to hold more paint. They tend to hold on to more water because of the fibers, and you can do certain things with them like glazing that will not necessarily work well with synthetics. Okay, but those are again advanced stuff. Those are the things that you may want to study and get better with eventually as you go along. But just to get started, it's really just about laying paint and making sure that you're happy with the end result. Okay. And again, everybody starts out somewhere. And the thing is, things when you start out, they look ugly. But as long as you're able to go and correct whatever it is that you're doing, you're good. Oh, the other question, by the way, that I was not able to put as part of the presentation. Do you need steady hands? And do you need clear eyesight?
Do you need steady hands?
I am a caffeine addict, and I am wearing, these are 600s. So no. I'm just gonna say no. There are just certain techniques. For example, if your hands are shaky, because my hands tremble, especially when I'm tired. My hands tremble. But if you lay your elbow on this while you're painting, that steadies a lot of the stuff. And also, when you don't hold on to your miniatures, except you have, this is just an acetone bottle with sand and glue to keep the sand in place, plus poster tack. So I can just put that figure in and I can paint like this. Alright. And you sometimes doing this and painting like a praying mantis keeps your hand steady. Alright. Vision-wise, I need new glasses. But there are other vision aids that you can get.
Magnifying glasses.
Yeah, if you want to look like an alien welder. Yeah, jewelers, glasses. Some people use that. I have them, but I ended up not using them because I just don't feel comfortable with them. And again, it's really just time. It's really just time on how you put those. It's really just the amount of time and the amount of effort that you put into the hobby, into the art actually, and the more you get out of it. Other stuff that I want to talk about. For example, this is where I put my paint. This is a wet palette. Oh, what is it? If you're kuripot, this is your best friend. Why? What? Oops. See, shaky hands. So basically, you got your paint, right? And if you put them, let's say in those round palettes, and we live in a tropical country, eventually they will dry out, right? And then you're gonna just have to put more. The thing about wet palettes is that it draws water from the sponge. So there's a sponge in there. Sorry, here we go. There's a sponge in there, and this is baking paper. Make sure that your baking paper is silicone or wax free, because silicone and wax fights water.
Yes.
That's not what you want to happen there. You can either use watercolor paper, parchment paper, or baking paper. Any way is fine. But basically, you have a sponge that keeps the water in there. You have water, just enough to wet the paper and keep that paper wet. And this will extend the usability of your paints.
Quick question.
Yo.
Paints are water-based or
Yes, they're water-based.
Water-based. Okay.
Yes.
Water is a thinner.
Yes, right. Because some people have made the mistake of, I want to paint miniatures. And then they go to, let's say, a hobby shop where they sell those model airplanes and they use Tamiya.
Paints or enamels.
Tamiya is the biggest liar ever. Because they say they're water-based paints. They're not. I'm just going to say this right now. They lie. They're alcohol-based. They will kill your brushes. They do. So, but Tamiyas, you can paint miniatures with Tamiyas. I'm going to say that. I've seen people do great work with Tamiya paints. And it's cheap, great for them. I just don't like using alcohol all the time. Because I have a bad habit.
You lick it?
I lick my brush. So I don't want to keel over eventually. Alright. I have that bad habit of also one of the things that I paint or what I do when I paint is I need to because you want to make sure that your paint is thin enough. Well, actually, you need to know one of the tricks that you will eventually learn when you're doing this is how thick is your paint for the specific task that you want it to do. Okay. So, for example, if you're going to go with the base coat, for example, the first pass of paint that you want on your figure, that's probably going to be okay from the bottom. That's fine. But then, if you're going to want to do blends, glazes, you're going to want to thin them eventually. The other thing that I do is I have a palette. I use my own skin to determine if sorry. You just restart. I use my own skin to determine if my paint is thick enough or so when I paint you'll know when I've been painting because this entire thing is going to be covered in paint. Okay. But basically that's what you have. So for example, some thin paints there's a purpose even if it's just like that thin, there's going to be a purpose for that. Sometimes it's just for tinting colors and stuff. But that's what you do. That's also the biggest advantage of having a wet palette like this is not just to keep the paint usable, but to keep your paint at the consistency that you want it.
Moist.
Okay. So, what else? Questions? Yeah, what's up?
We use those other chemicals to clear up the paint, right? To remove all the paint. Can you do spot removing?
For spot removing, this is for everything. This is for entire hard drive erase. Okay, but if you want to do spot erasures and you think that you're the type of person who wants to do spot erasures, there's going to be a little bit of preparation that you need. For example, some miniature painters that I know For example, they painted the figure at a certain stage, and they don't want to screw it up at that point. They're going to varnish their paint. They're going to varnish their miniature. A varnish is basically a clear coat. It's a protective coating. I use varnish as at the end so that the paint doesn't rub off easily. Alright? But some people would do this. They would varnish their figure at a certain point as their save point. Then, if they want to, for example, they make a mistake, they're going to get, let's say, a Q-tip and alcohol, then they're just going to rub off the mistake. Alright? Some people do that. Me, reset. Reset the entire. I rarely screw up bad enough that I have to reset that way anyway. Because the good thing about if you're going to be using paints like this, yung specialized paint for this, is that the paint is thin enough that it doesn't bury the detail too fast if you make a mistake. So if you make a mistake, just paint over it again. Just paint over it again. But if you're going to use craft paints, then that's one of the risks that you're going to be running, is that you're going to lose detail because makapal yung paint. Alright? So that's what you do. So but some people do that, varnish. Me, sometimes I also do the acetone trick. If I'm painting a metal figure, because this is plastic, I have metal figures there. If I'm painting a metal figure, I will get acetone, just the cheap store-bought 6 peso bottle acetone that you get. Drip a Q-tip into it and press it into the portion that I want to erase, and then that will eventually peel off. Then I just prime that spot. I have a brush on primer and I just paint over it again. That's it.
How long?
What do you mean how long?
How long do you have to have it dry off?
Just press it until the paint sticks to the Q-tip. It's pretty quick. Acetone eats the paint very, very fast. Okay. So resets. This. Oh, by the way, the best thing about the method where I do a base coat of the major color, and you'll notice that the major color is a dark color. I will only do this if it's dark. If the major color is a lighter color, I have a different plan altogether. A loser. But anyway, one of the major advantages of having, let's say, starting out with a base color of dark color is that and doing it like this is that if you miss spots, it's very hard to detect. So, for example, if I started with a white primer, then I just started painting it section by section without a base coat of a major color. Alright? Eventually, there will be spots that you will miss. And when you turn the miniature around, you'll notice, oh, there's white spots showing up. So you have to go and correct that. Right? So I do this method just so that, again, it's faster because I don't have to do a lot of corrections. And if I miss a spot, sometimes I can get away with it because it's not seen. Sometimes, for example, some portions of a mini don't necessarily need to paint. For example, the undersides, right? Or things that the eye will no longer see, unless you're painting for competition. All right. So there. Great. So minis, right? Basically, it can range from this. These are all from Moon Punch. Moon Punch is a group. Is the group that I belong to. We are commission painters, and we paint this. For example, this is from a board game. This is from a tabletop game. This is I painted this one. Ian painted this one. You'll notice he did some freehand on the wave serpent. That's yeah. So again, high level type of painting right there. You can go with that. You can just go with the utilitarian type of painting that I do for board games. Junex painted this one. This actually won 2 competitions, if I'm not mistaken. Manila and Baguio invitationals for IPMS, and I painted this one, and that also won an award. Yeah, that's the thing. There's also painting well, not necessarily painting competitions, but modeling competitions here in the Philippines. If you've ever been to Glorieta and you see a display for IPMS, the International Plastic Modelers Plastic Scale Modeling Competition.
December yun, diba?
Sometimes December, sometimes November, sometimes October. It depends. Basically, the latter part of the year. That's where they have those displays of tanks, airplanes, and stuff. I actually enter competitions for sci-fi or fantasy and stuff. You may not necessarily see because there's a very small pool of people who attend and who actually put entries. And that's actually one of the major motivations of why I'm doing this talk, because I want to get more people into the hobby. Because I have an agenda. I have a hidden agenda. What is my hidden agenda? IPMS, they're scale modelers, right? So they're the serious, historically accurate folks that your tank is out of scale. That wheel is not that size it's supposed to be, or that color in this sunset at noon is not what you're going to get for that tank. No, okay, so they're very serious like that. Okay, tanks, airplanes, boats, cars, all very serious. So I want to get geeky folks into painting plastic models so that we can enter them, and there's going to be more fairies, dragons, monsters.
Right.
I want, those plastic models. I want the representation, right? Because right now that's the only painting competition that we have for these miniatures. So, but basically, yeah, it's free to enter. All right, it's free to enter. It happens every year. There are announcements about it, but I just kind of want the geeky, girly stuff there. Yeah, my agenda for this year is to paint the girliest models I can find.
Sailor Moon.
Yeah, that's one.
Is that Kingdom Death though?
Yes, this one, the one on the bottom. That's Kingdom Death. All right. So those are the major points that I have for this talk, really. Unless you got any questions, concerns, requests. Anything? Yo, what's up? What's up?
Pwede ba ito mag-OSL?
Sure. That's another thing that I wanted to talk about here, because right now this is just an introduction. One of the things that I plan to do is actually do lessons. I'm just not sure how the costing is going to be and how the arrangement is going to be. But if you're interested in setting up lessons, for example, if you want to get into the modeling and you don't want to don't want to invest in the paints right now, but you have your figure that you want to get into, just send me a PM. I'm on Moon Punch Painting on Facebook. All right, and we can make arrangements, and I can supply the paints. All right, and there's going to be a fee, I guess. I'm still setting it up, but maybe a maximum of 4 people. I can do small sessions like that. Just for you guys. What's up?
Yung primer mo for white, what do you normally use?
I use Etch Primer. 1K Etch is the brand that's in Ace Hardware. I rarely use specialized primers. I have a picture of that. I rarely use specialized primer. I use hardware primers. Hindi ko siya nas-include dito. But anyway, there are primers specifically made for minis. And for scale models. I don't use them, number one, they're expensive. They're very expensive for what they are. Basically, which is primer. Number two, some of them outright lie. No, Tamiya's fine. The Tamiya primer is great.
Games Workshop.
Tamiya primer is best at its price point when it comes to... Yes, GW, there you go. Games Workshop outright lies because they say their paint is primer, but it's not. It's paint. It's paint, so it's not going to stick. Especially when you're painting metals. So what I do is I get Bosny, just the regular gray primer that you're... It's not even... I don't even know it's... It says gray primer. That's not even primer. That's just gray paint, colored like primer. Yes, that's why the color is primer gray. It's not a primer, it's primer gray.
Technically lying.
They're technically lying. Alright, I'm just kidding. Because once you encounter real primer, you'll know it's real primer because they have a certain smell. And it's not a fun smell. Because when with the regular paints, it's okay, fine. Alright, anyway. But when you get primers, so if I'm going to paint metal figures, number one, if I'm painting metal or if I'm painting white, primering white, I go for the 1K etch that's specifically created for metal figures, for metal stuff, like cars And but it's more expensive than normal. It's about 400 bucks, but it's a big can. So I do that. I don't buy the 800 to 1,000 peso.
That works for plastic also.
Yeah.
1K by
1K each. Each. It comes in gray and white, so I go with the white. Yo.
Another question. What about if I'm painting on polymer clay?
Polymer clay, same thing.
Same thing.
You just have to make sure that your polymer clay, they have a varnish. They have a specific varnish for it. Varnish that first. Because there are some polymer clays that will react to the primer. Sculpey ba?
Parang
Yeah. Di ba may sarili sang varnish?
Oh.
Varnish that first, then prime.
Okay.
Right. So there we go. Other questions? Other concerns? Right. So again, when it comes to your motivations on painting, again, last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this, because some people are here, they're interested, they want to start. Some people are here because they've started in the past and they can't seem to get better. They can't continue. I'm just going to say at this point that the most important thing, and this actually we mentioned it earlier, is just to start, to begin. A lot of people have what I call gear paralysis. What is gear paralysis? I can't start kasi wala akong ganito. No, that's an excuse. Alright? You can get the cheap ones, start, you'll improve on that. Then, once you have this, you'll appreciate it more once you have this. Because you'll be able to take care of it, you'll be able to take advantage of it once you have that. So, some people have that form of gear paralysis. I can't start because I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have that. No, just start with what you have. Get better. Then, once you get those things that you're trying to get, then it'll all be the better for it. The other form of gear paralysis that I hate, but I see people do a lot is, I have this, ayokong gamitin kasi baka masira. I have this, ayokong gamitin. Pag magaling na ako, tsaka ako gagamitin. Yun. I see a lot of folks, especially in the wargaming community, that do that. So I'm just going to say, use your stuff. Ruin, don't forget, don't be afraid to ruin your stuff. Yes, it's expensive now, but you learn that's an 800 peso lesson. Let's just put it that way.
It's like a heirloom brush mounted to your wall.
Well, if it's there and it's not doing anything, then that's just 800 pesos doing nothing. But if you ruin it, then you learn, okay, I'm not supposed to do that. That's the whole point. Or I should buy something cheaper so I can ruin that instead. Alright? Don't be afraid to ruin your gear. Especially nowadays where you can get a lot of these things very, very easily. 10, 15 years ago, magpapatayan ng mga tao when it comes to sable brushes. Right? Because it's not that readily available here. But now a lot of people you kind of have to thank the hipster hobbyists. Yung mga calligraphers, yung mga nail artists, yung mga ganong hobbies, because a lot of the gear that they have there overlaps with what we need. Jewelry making and stuff. So, kaya nga sabi ko dati, in order to make miniature painting popular, let's get Chris Aquino to do it. But then I got shouted down.
I did.
She shouted me down. Alright. But again, a lot of people shouted me down. But basically, that's it. That's my intro to miniature painting. You're not going to, if you want to start, there's a cheap way to get started. You don't have to dive into it head first, then have regrets later. There's a cheap way to get into it. But once you get into it, there's a very fulfilling hobby that can be found here. It's halfway between art and hobbying. And again, you don't need to be an artist. Alright? I'm saying that as a person who likes to draw, but I'm just saying that I've got people I know who are very, very good painters who have otherwise have no artistic bone in their body. Alright? So, other questions? Other concerns? Arch? We're good? We're good. So if that's the case, guys, thank you very much for spending time with me, for being patient. Yes?
Guys, before everybody goes, is it okay